there are a lot of weird terms that you've probably never heard. Some things maybe you've looked up on the internet and so on. Do you have any questions specifically about things you've heard and didn't know what they meant? Words you heard or names you heard?
Hmm. As usual, when I'm put on the spot, my brain does not remember anything.
Yes.
But I guess I have been wondering, like this is a mudra that we do, right? Or
Yes.
technically, is that is there a specific name for that one?
Yes.
Like
This is called the cosmic mudra.
cosmic mudra. Okay, I gotta write that down.
Um, in in Japanese, it's called Hokkaijoin. It sounds cooler in Japanese than it does in English, if you ask me. This this is called cosmic mudra because when we put it in our lap, right, it makes a circle here,
Mm,
and then it makes a circle here, and then that circle becomes our whole body with our legs if you're sitting on the floor, and then that circle is echoed in the room that you're in the building you're in the town you're in the country you're in, on the planet you're on, and so on.
mm. So
And so,
it's like that the circle in your lap, then the circle of you saying like your legs being crossed.
well, yeah, your arms for what is the
Uh-huh.
next larger circle, and then your body, and then and so on out, and that represents. It's like joining the fractal of existence.
Okay.
One might say, to be a little fun, simplified. Do you got any questions about terminology?
Mm.
I don't think so off the top of my head.
Mm. Greg's been studying this stuff for a long time, so he's got a broad familiarity.
In
Yes.
some ways.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I definitely do not. And have been, yeah, kind of meaning to get into more of that. I don't know, I guess the minutia, some of the teachings. Um,
Sure.
I mean, like,
maybe
so
I
go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say maybe I can flip the script around on eshin and say, what do you think are terms that people need to know
Mhm.
or that are helpful to know that maybe people who are first starting um, might encounter?
Nothing. You don't need to know anything. It- just learn as you go. If you're an academic headed person, then picking up a book with a good glossary in it usually can get you a long way along in the being able to navigate some of the stuff if you study it in that way. I honestly don't think that all of the esoteric terms are all that helpful.
Mhm.
I I also think that it's possible to, well, at least what I'm trying to do is to teach the stuff, even if I use a text and reference it, to give explanations as I'm talking about it, which make it more grounded or practical and not esoteric. The
Mm.
jargon is fun, but Zen as a religion is not it's not anything other than exactly what this is right now. So our common vernacular is sufficient to, how to say, to transmit how to orient ourselves to stillness and silence and what to do when we feel stuff, because that's the only thing that's what comes up when you sit still. You feel stuff. Well, what do you do with that? And all of that fits in our normal everyday English. Everything else is just fun. Just saying, "Oh, anyuttara samyaku sambodai." It's like, yeah, okay, what is that? That sounds fun. Or hotsubodai shin. Yeah, it sounds cool. And it fits a certain phenomena really nicely. It's the arising of a will toward the way. And the way meaning the Buddha way, meaning encountering every part of your life with sort of levity and a sense of practice.
Mhm.
It's intentional, even the tough stuff. and the easy stuff, and recognizing impermanence at play and the constancy of change in everything. So Hotsubo Daishin is sort of the root point. That's also the point that somebody goes, oh, I want to, if I joined a Zen group, it probably is good for me. That is Hotsubo Daishin. Oh,
Okay.
but do you really need the word? It's just fun. It's like icing on
Right.
the cake.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you could just attribute it to be like that. Just any of these definitions or words are just kind of man-made or thought-made.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not
Exactly.
actually the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the more you intellectualize it, the more you almost like get yourself into a hole of like, yeah,
You, my friend, have hit the nail on the head. Nonetheless, there are lots of terms in this sort of atmosphere of Buddhism, whatever tradition you're kind of encountering.
Mhm.
So it might be useful, at least, to be able to ask some questions specifically about it.
Well,
Greg,
with
does that answer? Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Greg said terms you need to know. What would you say that there are terms that are just good to know? Because need to know, obviously, nothing. But
Well put. Good to know, I would say it's hard to say that everyone needs to know anything in particular, because when I teach children, I don't use any of these words.
mhm,
The only word I might use is zazen,
mhm,
but then, of course, when I teach Japanese children, I don't use the word zazen. I just say simply sitting,
mhm,
tada suatte. And that way, because it's a skillful means, it's a skillful way of using words which helps to neutralize, well, particularly for children. If they think that they have to do something, they'll tend to not want to. They can rebel against it.
right.
But uh, adults, we don't have quite the same kind of problem, but making it easy to understand is helpful. And so some people might benefit from a certain set of terminology, and some people might not. So it's hard to say that there's anything that's actually good to know.
Mhm.
But you get curious, like, what's this? Why is there a little ring on here? What's with these? What's with these long sleeved clothes? Those are all questions that are open. You can ask those too.
I am interested in the ring. Yeah, is there a significance of the ring or like where it connects there?
This is called a kan in Japanese. This one is made of uh, probably like black persimmon wood.
Hmm,
It's quite hard. It was a gift from a roshi in Eiheiji, an old master in Eiheiji. It is a leftover. It is just a decoration from probably before Edo, maybe up to Edo-ji, like up to 300-400 years ago. Most the ropes. I mean, now we have ropes that tie our robes onto our body. Um, Greg, in the Thai tradition, there are no ropes on your robes, are there?
No, it's just basically the long rectangle, and you grab the top corners and you basically twist it, and
Ah,
then you
yeah.
take all that and throw it over your shoulder, and then you have to hold on to the bottom of it, otherwise it unravels.
That's a great. Um, there are many ways that we hold the Buddha's robes to our body, and one of the ways that also exists is to use a rope or a strip of cloth that becomes a tie. It, for a long time, that tie would fray and break and all, and it would become a pain in the butt. So someone created a way with a kind of a hook, perhaps also made out of wood, and a ring, and they would sew, much like this. They would sew a strip that could be tied onto the ring or sewn onto the ring, and then that ring came down and hooked on the bottom, and it held your robes onto your body.
hmm,
And today, Korean Zen monks' robes are like this, and a lot of Taiwanese Zen monks robes are also like this, to be kind of like the old-fashioned style. In Japan, however, they got really good at making silk robes, which are very strong, actually, and they last quite a long time. Some people, my master says silk ones last a whole lifetime, which I'll believe it when I see it, but they last a long time. But at the whenever, I don't know how to put this simply. Whenever someone came up with this, putting straps on a small Buddha's robe, because that's all this is. This is a tiny little version of a Buddha's robe. In the old days, monks might have just carried this little square with no straps. They leave their robes in the temple and go on a trip or whatever. So this is always with them, because that's an old rule that you always have to be with your robes. But then at some point they put these straps on there, and there was an argument between two very large, powerful temples in the Soto Zen tradition, between Eiheiji and Sojiji. Names are not important. And one of the temples wanted to keep putting this ring on the big robe that covers our body, and the other one did not. And so they came to an agreement that they would put the ring somewhere. And so it became a decoration that got put on the straps that hold our small robe on.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's like that patchwork robe is going back to the Buddha, like, yeah, taking like found materials from, yeah, like dead bodies and some things. Yeah.
Okay. In the very beginning, I think the Buddha used just a very large cloth that was used to cover a dead body. And then one of his students actually could only find smaller pieces. He collected up these small pieces and washed them and dyed them, and then sewed them together to make a big enough piece to cover his whole body. And the Buddha saw the pattern with which he sewed them together, and he liked it. And he said, this looks just like the rice fields, which were common in anywhere in Asia, well, northern India. And he thought, what a wonderful design. From the very middle one, everything spreads out. All the Dharma falls like rain and trickles down to every field. And he said, we should all sew our robes in the same pattern. This shall be the pattern of our robes.
Dharma. What is, I guess, the Zen definition of Dharma?
I'll give this to you in two ways. One is the teachings of the Buddha, words that are handed down from generation to generation, treasured and studied again and again. Some of them directly from the Buddha, and some of them coming from masters who came after the Buddha. That's one definition of Dharma. Another definition of Dharma is seeing nature and understanding impermanence.
Okay.
In Zen, in particular, the Master Bodhidharma, the founder, the monk in the history of Buddhism we attribute to have founded the Zen school, the Zen idea. Though he was very well studied in sutras, in the teachings of some of the written down or transmitted teachings of the Buddha, he also was very insistent and said that Zen is a special transmission outside of the scriptures, outside of the memorized words of the Buddha or anything like that. It's something that we can, the Dharma that we can come to know is right before our eyes. And so there is no need for books and words and letters, ultimately. Okay. The Buddha didn't have them. Worked out fine for that person.
Okay. And then is there a Zen definition of karma in that way? Or because I guess I remember from studying kind of like Indian traditions of like Dharma and karma being different things, and actually Dharma being what most people think karma is is there is there a use of the word karma in Zen, or okay?
Karma is, there's the old, I want to give this definition. They're kind of two. They're two, of course. There's the old Hindu version of karma, which means that what you do in this present lifetime, well, and also the sum of what you did in past lifetimes, assuming that there is some sort of recurring essence,
Mhm.
like an unending kind of self that repeats from lifetime to lifetime, reincarnates. The sum of all of the things that you have done produces effects which play out in the future. And so what the effects you're experiencing now are a result of what you did in the past or what was done in the past. And what you do now affects what will happen in the future. That's one definition. And that's sort of an old, to be pejorative, it's just leftover Hindu garbage. And I say garbage, not saying that it's completely false. I'm saying garbage because we don't need it. We can't verify what was in the past. We certainly can't verify what's in the future. And by that, I mean before birth or after death. We only know what's now. So within the now, there's another definition of karma, which is more like, well, inside here, there are two more definitions. So there's the definition that's sort of like the life-to-life version, where, what you do today affects you tomorrow kind of thing. If you're a jerk to someone on the street, then someone's going to be a jerk to you later. And yeah, that might kind of happen sometimes, and we might see a pattern there. But there's a more subtle definition, which often without being explicitly pointed to, is what I have come to understand in Zen especially, is that our karma is how we get hung up on our own actions and judge ourselves. You live your life, you make choices, we pick and choose, and sometimes we have 2 or 3 too many beers, for example, and you get a little bit drunker than you really want to be. And then the next morning you feel bad and you're like, man, I should have stopped at that, that third one or whatever. And it would have been a fine night. Or I said something to someone and you get up the next morning, you're like, maybe I said that in anger. And I kind of wish I didn't say that. That is your karma playing out inside your own head, and you're bearing your own stuff. To deal with that, we should practice some of the good ideas from Buddhism, namely, orient yourself to stillness and silence. And an obvious thing that comes up is waiting a little bit before you speak. Speaking in a kind and gentle way, considering the feelings of others to a great extent, and generally operating with warm-heartedness and compassion. If you follow that simple kind of a golden rule, then what tends to happen is the karma of having done something that you get stuck on evaporates. You basically stop creating hooks in your own activities that you get caught up on. Also, that other people get caught up on. You don't piss people off, for example, although you might. And sometimes that's okay. But you're not left with anything. In that way, you enter a kind of realm of non-doing. You're living your life, but there's nothing left behind. And that is the subtler untying or unbinding of our living everyday karma.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, those terms always confuse me, because I feel like they are very interchangeable between different traditions and
And ultimate careful. I say this with great care. Whatever a person needs to believe, whatever helps a person is okay.
Mhm.
Whether or not we could use logic to sort of destroy it. Logic and reason can destroy a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
But if a person needs that structure in the way they encounter and understand and process their life and their world, then, and it produces good results, then it's okay. Those words, those concepts, those ideas are true in that sense.
Right, like the people who get the good out of contemporary religion.
Yeah. For example.
Yeah.
Isn't there kind of like a devil's advocate counter argument isn't it a very slippery slope where if you believe in things that maybe aren't true or accurate, you can continue to get like stuck in whatever that belief is and you never really see through to the real thing?
Yes, you're 100% right. And this is where having a teacher who you trust is very, very important.
Would you say that they will allow you to use that as a crutch until it's no longer helpful, and then they'll kind of help steer you away from it or see through it?
In two ways. One, a teacher will doesn't necessarily have to be a formal person sitting in a teacher seat with some sort of formal certification. It could be a child that you just meet on the street. You know, you're sitting in a park waiting to meet a friend, and a kid walks up to you and says, "Your clothes look funny," or "You smell bad." Well, that person is teaching you. They're telling you something. They can see you in a way that you can't see yourself, or smell you in a way you can't smell yourself. And they can tell you. They're courageous enough to just tell you like it is. And you probably don't like what they have to say. But what they have said has some truth and some merit to it if you regard it open-heartedly. If you can, and that also teaches you to encounter your own ego, which is another way that you're getting taught by all beings. In particular, when you, for example, take up a relationship with a Zen teacher, or I like to assume any Buddhist teacher, one, they've been studying themselves for a long time. If you study yourself, you understand there is no self. You also understand how it works for a lot of other people, not even 99.999%. And then you also understand how we're all in it together. So given that time, and well, say, if their master verified them as a teacher, that verified practice and understanding, you can trust it a little bit. And they'll tell you, well, I hopefully at some point will tell you things that you don't like to hear. And some of those things are things that you might be able to use. The discomfort, one, because that teaches you about your own ego. And two, it also, maybe you hadn't thought about it in this way, or you are doing the same thing again and again and not getting the results that you are hoping for. So maybe a teacher like me would say, don't do that anymore. Simply, every time you get into this situation, stop doing that. And then that helps steer you away from wandering down an unhelpful path. The other side is that if you get into something with someone who seems like a teacher, they might be really charismatic and they might charm you out of your wallet or out of all kinds of other stuff. They might charm you out of yourself even, which might not be a bad thing, but it could also be a horrible thing. And having a teacher who's willing to get into it with you, to argue with you and to be wrong is also, at least in my opinion, a sign of a good teacher, somebody who's not taking themselves so seriously that they can't be questioned or cross-examined.
Mhm.
Let's see if did I get all those points, Craig? Wandering 2 down
I'm
here,
not
2
sure.
down here. Yeah.
I think basically the core of the question is, at what point does it become harmful or counterproductive to believe in skillful means that are kind of the whole finger pointing at the moon?
If you become obsessed with collecting philosophies or collecting terms or collecting, or even collecting sutras, like memorizing all the sutras that you ever see, you're wasting your time. You don't need them all. In most cases, you don't even need an entire sutra. Perhaps you only need a line. But a good teacher, if you are so lucky to find one, will remind you of this, especially when you don't want to hear it. This is not the point. All of my yammering is not the point.
One thing I just thought of, I don't know if you've ever discussed it since we started the group, or I don't even know if it's even emphasized in like formal Zen training, but the two truths doctrine I find is very helpful.
Sure,
I don't know.
class.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Did I name it correctly?
That might be.
Basically, my understanding is that there's two aspects of reality that are always present at the same time. You know, there's a bunch of different ways, different word combinations that are used to describe it. The one that I think is most common is like ultimate reality and then conventional reality. Because that kind of gets into the whole like the skillful means or the conventional reality to help point you or to make apparent the ultimate side. But I found that once I started learning about Two Truths doctrine, it helped me understand more stuff that I was reading, because otherwise it can be pretty confusing. And you can end up, falling into spiritual bypassing or spiritual materialism from reading things that maybe are meant to be skillful means, but then you take them as the ultimate truth as opposed to the conventional truth.
So just if I can interject, so the ultimate truth would be that just being here, like what we're doing, like,
yep.
And then the conventional is what's pointing us to that. Okay.
I would say you could use like the table as an example. On the conventional truth of a table is that it is like a fixed object that is usable in the world that we operate. You can put plates on it, water on it. It's there. If you run into it, you feel pain. The ultimate side of it would be there's no such thing as an actual table because everything is empty. A table is just an assembly of different parts, and those parts are themselves made from other things. And that's kind of where you get to like everything is interdependent, interbeing. Nothing has any inherent permanent substance. And so seeing a table from both sides of reality can be important when you're discussing things that are of a subtle nature.
And to add to that, yes, in the understanding the sort of metaphysical side, getting lost in the concepts, it removes us from our lived experience in a profound way. And it can it's a very easy place for a human being with a mind to get sick, to become disassociated with our lived embodied experience.
Mhm.
And a good teacher will recognize that you're doing that and help smack you. Maybe literally by creating the causes and conditions for you to wake back up. Sometimes it's they throw a shoe across the sitting hall and it smacks you. Maybe they miss and they hit the person next to you, but all the same, the experience is so shocking that you wake up. Like last week I said everybody should, at some point when you're just doing some mundane thing, washing dishes or, you know, it would be really funny if you did it while you were pooping, but just to just spontaneously just go, "Ah!" and wake yourself up.
I've done that unintentionally while pooping.
Oh, that's probably for different reasons. Oh. But yeah, yes, Greg, you're correct. Of course, the real and the absolute, the true two truths way of compartmentalizing our conceptual and less conceptual encounter with reality might help us to deal with the fact that there are two ways to see it. But mm, there's a conversation. It's commonly well, how do I say that? It might be kind of popular to say that in the West, we tend to be very conceptual, and in the East, people tend to be less conceptual. And and so because we're kind of conceptually oriented by our upbringing, how we're taught in school from the very beginning, you have to use things in the abstract. Well, what does this character think? What's happening in this story? What does this mean? You have to write an essay or you have to answer a question or pontificate if you're just a little kid reading with your teacher and your teacher asks you questions. So what happened to the hat in the story? Kids, American kids can sort of play in their imagination with stuff. Japanese kids can't. They just don't. You might find Americans more prone to getting lost in that absolute way of looking at our lived experience. And so it's very important to remember that everyday, mundane, waking mind is it. That is Buddha mind.
Hmm.
What is beyond concepts is simply no longer in the realm of thought.
Hmm. Okay.
That even if I've said it, that becomes a concept, doesn't it? We're screwed.
Skillful means.
Mm. Indeed.
Hmm.
Mm, it's kind of a lot. How are you doing there, Connor? Taking notes?
I'm taking some notes and
Good.
yeah,
Good.
yeah, consolidate all this stuff in my brain. Yeah.
In my own beginning, when I first encountered Buddhism, because Chelsea, a person who's joined our group many, many times, she's a member of our group. She was in college and took a world religions course.
Mhm.
And so she had to go to a Buddhist temple and write a kind of an essay or whatever about it, do some research. And she said, you kind of seem kind of Buddhist. And I said,
Hmm.
no, that's cliche. I am none of the sort. Barefoot running, hippie, jazz musician, people loving. Sure, maybe. And she dragged me to this temple and I found myself in a world surrounded by terms that I had no idea about. I mean, there were a lot of Christian terms that I had no idea about, still have no idea about. Weird words like sepulcher. It's a cool sounding word. I'm not really sure what it means, but Eucharist and there's all kinds of crazy terms. I think it just makes the clergy sound cooler. They want to just sound cooler. If we've got esoteric terms that nobody has
Yeah.
access to the meaning of, then we're above the plebeians. I don't know. I sought out, as a result of that and finding myself in that environment, a book. I didn't know what book. I just went to the library to find a book about Buddhism, which had a really extensive list of terminology. It's not a difficult thing to find, especially if you search Buddhism. There's a couple of good books that come up. One was done in the early 1900s by a person named Christmas Humphreys. The book is probably out of print. It was very old, but it was largely, maybe 40% of the book was glossary. And I just devoured. It's just such a strange thing to just read a dictionary, and I just plugged all of this stuff into my head over and over, and was like, what is that again? Oh, that's that thing. Oh, and then use that as a jumping off point to look up other stuff or whatever. But it's useful if you're curious and inclined in that way. But as the years went by and I met other people who are clearly living their life in accord with the Buddha way, that is, being kind and warm-hearted and seeing everything in their life as a practice. A lot of the people that were doing the most remarkable living were people who didn't know a lot of that stuff. It turns out it's not all that important.
Right.
But it is pretty fun.
Yeah, I remember. You were talking a few weeks ago about people who practice Zen without knowing it, or just live a life that is without knowing anything about that.
It's true. There are a lot of people who are already 100% in the way. Now, I posit there are also people who are already I say this in my head. Saying it out loud makes it sound less believable, but there are people who are completely enlightened and don't say a word about it and live their life just like that. And recognize that trying to explain the way they live their life and the reasons behind why they live their life the way they do are very difficult, if not impossible, to transmit. And so they just enjoy it for themselves. In old Sanskrit, there's a term called Pratyeka Buddha, and that's a kind of a Buddha who just, oh, I'm enlightened. I ain't gonna try to explain this because people are stupid, and just watch it play out. Live your life, grow your potatoes, and do your zazen, and finish out your days. But then there are people who get it and recognize the suffering in others, and something in their heart calls them to try to teach. Or people beg them again and again, and then they end up going, okay, well, all right, let's see what I can do.
Okay.
We also call those people bodhisattvas, people who take up the work of being the finger which points to the way.
Yeah, it's funny. I've listened to that Steely Dan song for years, and then had never knew what a bodhisattva was.
No, yeah. Yeah. It, it's even the I mean the whole thing is like kind of weird. All the imagery, like even this image behind me is the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, Kannon or Kuan Yin or other names for this particular Buddhist image,
Mhm.
is a shape-shifting goddess of compassion, the Iron Goddess. I'm sure you've had a cup of Iron Goddess tea at some point in your life. Like they're like curled up balls of tea, and you put them in hot water, and they go, and they open up like this.
I don't think I have.
Oh, next time you're in like Chinatown or Little Vietnam, just look at some tea. You'll see one called Iron Goddess
Okay.
or tea Kuan Yin, and I'm not sure why that reference is to Kuan Yin. All the same, it's a nice tasting style of oolong. But the Bodhisattva Kannon is considered a shapeshifter. Well, are there shapeshifters? No. Objectively, no. But painted or sculpted in the form of a humanoid, we get this. But what Kuan Yin or Kannon is as a manifestation is when you are walking out of a coffee shop and the wind catches the door as you walk out, and you reach back without thinking and stop it so that it doesn't hit the person that's behind you.
Mhm.
Your catching the door is Kuan Yin. It's pure, thoughtless compassion. When you walk in your house and turn on your light, no, let's change the order. When you walk in your house after work, it's dark, it's winter, and you hit your leg on the corner of a table and you go, ah, shit. And you cuss a bunch, and then you turn the light on, and there are flowers in a vase in the middle of your table. And you look at the flower and you go, oh, this really brightens this room up. The flowers are Kuan Yin, teaching you to be here in the moment. In the midst of all your suffering, there's something beautiful here. That's a manifestation of compassion. And so Kuan Yin does that all the time in uncountable myriad, million, billions of ways throughout our lives, if you're willing to see it. And that practice is a direct result of doing zazen, orienting yourself to stillness and silence, and becoming sensitive and receptive enough to notice it. Not just happening as a gift to you, that's also happening, but also as in the way that you act when you act with a warm heart and compassion.
Okay.
No shapeshifters.
Can I play devil's advocate again?
Go for it.
Isn't that just a lot of conceptualization that we're adding to reality that's not necessary?
Absolutely.
So it's basically, if you find it helpful, go for it.
It's probably not so much something that you choose for yourself, but that the concept of this crystallized explanation of that phenomena can be used as a teaching tool for people whose intellectual or cognitive disposition requires it.
Okay.
This is there are a lot of times when teaching someone about how Kuan Yin manifests, how Kannon manifests in our lives, in us and in others, and in objects, not just people or animals, but that being given the gift of the image with its meaning, it can become like a salve for people who have a certain kind of suffering. And there's a lot of suffering that remembering this can help.
Hmm.
Even if you're very sort of reductive, as well, we three may be, and say, well, come on, there's no shapeshifters. That's just a bunch of baloney. But actually, if we regard the story as a helpful thing, and then we listen to some teaching or we read some teaching about it, and then we go about our lives and we bump into it, when we see it, then we can bow.
Mm.
And we can fully receive the gift of compassion. Sometimes it's happening and you don't say thank you, you don't know. And yet it's the compassion is still having a positive effect on you. That's also true. But without encountering the idea or the concept, then it's more difficult to also practice gratitude in recognition of compassion playing out in our lives.
Mm.
And then there are people who just need a goddess. They just need someone to pray to. And that's fine too. You can, Kuan Yin's here for that,
Mhm.
so to speak.
Yeah.
She's here to party.
Yeah, she's good with everything. She's got 10,000 hands. She can shake it any way it's needed to be shaked.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, nice. Thanks for answering those questions. That's a lot of this is, yeah. I mean, like you're saying, yeah, you don't need to know anything, but yeah, it's intellectually interesting, and I feel like like the two truths thing you were talking about, Greg, is definitely is something I've like thought about a lot and not necessarily had a I don't know definition or a allegory for. The table. The table allegory is great.
You'll probably just see it referenced if you read other things where people talk about like the ultimate or the conventional or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember at first it confused me until I figured out, oh, there's like 10 different sets of vocabulary that people use to describe this concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of use like I don't know, like primary and secondary consciousness or something. Like primary like being your just awareness, and then kind of secondary being your thinking mind and all the things that we think are us. Like yeah, I think ultimate and conventional is a better way of looking at it, more maybe clear as far as definition wise.
In Dogen's house, in Master Dogen's house in Eiheiji, the whole monastery is arranged. The Chinese monastic design is mirroring the shape of the Buddha's body. And so the main hall is the head, and then there's the Buddha hall, which is always at the heart. And on one side you have a kitchen, and one side you have the zendo, where we sleep and where we eat. And then there's the bath is one of the knees. The mountain gate is where your legs cross. And then there's also the toilet, which is the other knee. So every part of the whole monastery is the Buddha's body. And so no matter what you do inside the monastery, you are participating in the manifestation of Buddha.
Mm.
Outside the kitchen in Eiheiji, there are two kind of plaques, big, beautiful wooden plaques with beautiful calligraphy written on them, which is a kind of a Chinese poem, which says that so long as the real and the conceptual continue to exist in balance, at least in Eiheiji, it's the practice in this monastery will continue. In the negative sense, this means that if those things go out of balance, the practice in the monastery is in trouble. And in the physical sort of reified manifestation, doing zazen, sitting as a religious practice, as a center point of our lives, is very conceptual. But then cooking our bodies, creating our bodies, feeding us, keeping us healthy and strong, and cleaning that is not conceptual. It's physical. It's objectively necessary and true. And so as long as those two elements, well, that's represented by the kitchen, the queen, which also has the kind of cleaning department too. Although all monks clean, there's a department that does some sort of heavier lifting. So the cooks and the cleaners, and then doing the zazen are the balance of the two truths. And so those two things, to great extent, have to exist in balance. The harder you live your life, perhaps the more helpful it is to understand the ultimate reality. And that on the other side, if you just simply live your life, you only need a little bit of conceptualism. It just needs to be in balance. But yeah, just to point out that concept is baked onto the walls.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.